Poverty is something we see everywhere. We acknowledge it, we try to fight it. So why does it feel like this problem that we can never truly solve? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into a hidden reason why that is. And this image, wow, it really captures the great puzzle of our time, doesn't it? Incredible wealth rising right next to profound hardship. I mean, this isn't just some contrast, it's a full-blown paradox. And it's a paradox that just keeps persisting no matter how much the world's economy grows. And look, this paradox, it isn't really about a lack of money or resources. It's about something deeper. It's actually about how we see the problem. The real crisis, the one we're talking about today, is one of perception. And it might just be the single biggest obstacle to finding a real solution. Okay, so let's start with how we usually look at this problem. Think of it like you're holding a camera, right? But you've got this super narrow lens on. You're zoomed in tight on one little piece of the picture, and you're completely missing the massive scene happening all around it. So what exactly does that narrow lens show us? Well, it shows the most obvious, the most painful symptoms. We see unemployment, we see housing shortages, and we see those heartbreaking stories of individual hardship. And look, these things are absolutely real. They're painful and they demand our attention, for sure. But is that the whole story? And because that's what we're focused on, these symptoms, well, our solutions are designed to treat them directly. I mean, we create food banks, build shelters, launch job programs. And these are all good things. They're necessary. They provide critical relief, and they absolutely come from the best of intentions. But here's where we need to make a crucial pivot. What if all of these efforts are kind of like treating a fever, but never actually diagnosing the infection that's causing it? What if we're missing the underlying system that produces these symptoms in the first place? And that brings us to the core idea of this whole explainer. There's a hidden system at play here. Some researchers call it a perception framework, and it's this thing that quietly shapes everything about how we think, talk, and act on poverty. So what is this perception framework really? Well, think of it like an invisible architecture. It's the collection of all these unspoken rules, these incentives, and these stories that guides our entire approach to poverty. And this isn't about some secret grand conspiracy or anything like that. It's just the system that we all operate within, often without even realizing it. Okay, so how does this thing actually work? Well, you can break it down into 3 basic steps. It all starts with how the problem is framed. Then that frame gets reinforced by some really powerful incentives. And all of that leads to very predictable outcomes. So let's break that down step by step. All right, first up, framing. The main story we almost always hear is that poverty is a personal problem, right? An individual's failing or misfortune. And that narrative, that frame, it immediately pushes us to focus on fixing the person, instead of taking a step back and questioning the environment they're in. Okay, next up, incentives. So this whole personal failing frame, it gets reinforced constantly. Just think about it for a second. Governments, they get rewarded for big GDP growth numbers, not necessarily for reducing inequality. Media outlets, they get way more clicks and views from those dramatic, personal stories than they do from a deep, complex analysis of policy. The incentives are just all lined up to keep our focus squarely on the individual. And finally, that leads us to the outcome. So the result of all this, the framing, the incentives, is that paradox we started with. You get economic growth, but it's not really shared. You see cities expanding while entire communities get left behind. And here's the thing. The system isn't broken. It's actually producing exactly what it was designed to produce. So, you see, it really all comes back to that camera lens we were talking about. With that narrow lens, you see the struggling individual crystal clear, but the system all around them, it's just a total blur, out of focus. But the moment we switch to a wider lens, that whole system suddenly snaps into sharp focus. And that's when we can finally start to see the real root causes of that struggle. So this leads to a huge question, right? If this system is so clear once you start looking for it, why on earth is it so incredibly hard to change? Well, the answer is a little counterintuitive. What happens is you get this really powerful feedback loop. Our best efforts to help, charities, aid programs, they all operate inside this existing system. They do vital work, of course, easing immediate pain. But here's the crazy part, the paradox. By making the symptoms more bearable, we can, without even meaning to, reduce the pressure to fix the underlying disease. We accidentally end up stabilizing the very system we're trying to fight. So, where do we go from here? What's the path forward? The solution isn't just about throwing more money at the problem or creating some new program. No, the most powerful first step is actually a fundamental shift in our focus, a shift in our perception. What reframing poverty really means is consciously choosing to swap out that narrow lens for the wide-angle one. So instead of asking, why is this person unemployed, we start asking, what are the systems that are shaping our job market and who really gets access to it? See? It's a total shift in focus. And this leads us to a really powerful and maybe even a little uncomfortable conclusion. Poverty isn't just some glitch in the system that we can just patch up. As it says right here, it's a structural feature of how our complex economic and institutional systems are designed. It's an outcome of the system itself. And that leaves us with one final and, I think, really essential question. We started this whole thing by talking about a crisis of perception. So if we can actually fundamentally change how we see the problem, if we can move from that narrow focus on symptoms to a wide-angle view of the whole system, could that be the key to finally changing the outcome for good?